The forbidden book of the upright, provocative question on the Book of Jasher. What if the most shocking details of the pre-flood world were not lost in the waters, but preserved in a forbidden scroll that Rome deliberately hid from the Bible? In Joshua 10, the scriptures point directly to the Book of Jasher, a lost chronicle of the upright. You are about to discover why the Vatican censored these records, keeping you blind to the hidden origins of the giant Nephilim lines. The Book of Jasher unveils the genetic corruption of species and the reign of Enoch, explaining the secrets of the ancient world. Today, we must reclaim the forbidden scroll before the final countdown. Most modern pastors will tell you that the Bible is the only text we need, claiming that any book not in the Western canon is dangerous or corrupt. But I have come to realize that this flat theology completely ignores the direct references inside the scriptures themselves. The writers of Joshua and Samuel did not treat Jasher as apocrypha. They treated it as an authority, a legal record that confirmed the cosmic signs. By ignoring Jasher, the modern church has left us without the pre-flood calendar and the exact details of the Watchers' rebellion. Introduce the scripture mentions of Jasher. I have been sitting with the scripture mentions of Jasher for many years, praying for the watchmen of black families to see the structural receipts. In Joshua 10, the sun stood still and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves. And the text asks, is not this written in the Book of Jasher? In 2 Samuel, David laments over Saul and Jonathan, commanding his people to teach the children of Judah the use of the bow, and notes, behold, it is written in the Book of Jasher. These references are the legal receipts of the Chronicles authority. The Roman Church removed this book during the councils because it exposed the true geography of Eden and the mathematical cycles of the creation. They wanted a simplified timeline that they could manipulate, but the Creator preserved the scroll in the archives of East Africa. By reading the Book of Jasher, we are reclaiming the original chronology, bypassing the censorship of Rome, and standing on the testimonies of the ancient prophets. Scriptural proofs of a lost chronicle, the sun standing still in Joshua 10. When we read the account of Joshua 10, the cosmic anomaly is described in literal, physical terms. The sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down about a whole day. The writer of Joshua cites the Book of Jasher to verify this event, showing that the book was a widely known and respected chronicle of cosmic signs. The reference is a legal receipt, proving that the ancient covenant was synchronized with the movements of the heavens. This cosmic stay is a world-shaking revelation. It proves that the Creator will suspend the laws of physics to protect his covenant seed, establishing the physical receipts of his power. In my study of these timelines, I have realized that the Book of Jasher was the database where these anomalies were recorded, providing the mathematical keys to understand the cycles of the sun and the moon. By restoring the reference, we are reclaiming our connection to the cosmic calendar. The teaching of the bow in 2 Samuel 1, David laments the death of Saul and Jonathan, instructing his people to teach the children of Judah the use of the bow. The text notes that this instruction was written in the Book of Jasher. The bow was not just a weapon, it was the symbol of covenant defense and military precision. David referenced Jasher because the book contained the martial history and the covenant laws of warfare. This reference shows that the Book of Jasher was the manual of the kingdom. It outlined the physical training and the spiritual discipline required to defend the borders. I believe deeply that our families need this same tactical training today. We must teach our children the use of the spiritual bow, training their hands for the building and defense of our homesteads. rather than letting them remain helpless in the face of the system's invasion. The pre-flood world of Jasher, the Book of Jasher, provides a detailed chronological account of the pre-flood world. It describes the antediluvian era not as a primitive age, but as a period of advanced civilization and massive genetic rebellion. The book outlines the corruption of all flesh, detailing how the Watchers and the kings of the earth began to mix species and defile the creation order. This pre-flood world is the blueprint of our modern systems. The technologies, the governance, and the genetic mixtures of that era are being replicated in our cities today. By studying Jasher, we are obtaining the history of the rebellion, seeing that the flood was a necessary legal containment operation to preserve the human template. This knowledge is essential for the watchmen of this final season. The astronomical calculations of Joshua's day, the calculations recorded in the Book of Jasher regarding the sun's halt, provide a mathematical proof that has been studied by astronomers across generations. The text describes the sun stopping at its meridian point, maintaining its coordinate relative to the horizon for an extended duration. This precision matches the records of ancient calendars in Mesopotamia and Egypt, showing that the cosmic event was recorded globally by different civilizations. We must understand that this celestial order is a key signature of the Creator's authority. The Western Church has tried to treat these cosmic signs as simple myths, but the mathematical receipts in the ancient scrolls verify their reality. The watchman must return to these calculations, using the Book of Jasher to align the household calendar with the creation, rest, and understand the timing of the covenant. The legacy of the upright in the diaspora. The term Jasher or Yashar carries a deep legal weight in the Hebrew language. It refers to a straight line, an uncompromised path of covenant integrity. When David instructed the children of Judah to learn the use of the bow from this book, he was not just speaking of physical weaponry. He was calling for a return to the strategic and spiritual discipline that defined the ancient patriarchs. The bow is a symbol of targeted focus, a weapon that requires alignment and strength to execute. Our families in this diaspora season must reclaim this targeted focus. We cannot afford to live in a state of spiritual distraction, letting the entertainment grids of Babylon dictate our priorities. We must train our children in the practical and spiritual skills of survival, establishing the Torah as the straight line that guides our daily actions. The Book of the Upright is the manual for this alignment, providing the historical blueprints of our ancestors' victories. The solar alignment of the conquest, this solar staying sign, was a direct validation of Joshua's leadership before the armies of Canaan. In the ancient world, solar and lunar eclipses were viewed as royal judgments, but a complete standing still of the heavenly lights was a sign of cosmic backing. The Book of Jasher details the panic of the Canaanite kings as they watched the day refuse to end, realizing that the Creator himself was fighting for his chosen seed. This physical receipt shattered their morale. The Nephilim hybridization and corruption, the Nephilim origins. In Jasher, the Book of Jasher provides the details of the Nephilim, birth, and their genetic lineage. It shows that the giants were the physical progeny of the Watchers, born with massive bodies and corrupt spirits. The book outlines their diets, their weapons, and their governance, stripping away the mythological veil that the Western Church has placed over them. These details are essential to understand the nature of our spiritual warfare. The Nephilim were not spiritual ghosts. They were physical monsters whose spirits survived the destruction of their bodies. By studying their origins in Jasher, we can see why they are cursed to roam the earth, carrying the appetite of the giants into their possession attempts. This knowledge is the first shield of the homestead. The hybridization of species and animals, Jasher chapter 4, contains a shocking verse that detailed the genetic corruption. And the sons of men in those days took from the beasts of the earth, the cattle of the field and the fowls of the air, and taught the mixture of animals of one species with the other. This unlawful hybridization was a deliberate attempt to corrupt creation order and erase the boundaries established by the Creator. This physical corruption of species was the reason for the absolute nature of the flood. The Watchers had defiled the template of the animals, creating monstrous mixtures that could not exist in a holy creation. By understanding this hybridization, we can see why the dietary laws of the Torah are so strict. They are designed to prevent us from participating in the mixed, corrupted tissue of the rebellion, keeping our temples clean. The fallen Watcher legacy, the legacy of the fallen Watchers, is a warning to the covenant seed. The Book of Jasher details how their primary leaders were bound under the earth, experiencing the initial phase of their sentence. The disembodied spirits of their giant children were left to wander the earth, acting as a test for the righteous who keep the commandments of the Torah. We must stand in the authority of the covenant to resist their influence. The spirits of the giants look for hybrid environments, places where the law has been mixed and compromised. By maintaining our separation and keeping the commandments, we are enforcing the creation order against their ancient legacy, locking the gates of our households. Exposing the Nephilim genetic code, the Book of Jasher provides the detailed history of the Nephilim genetic corruption. It outlines how the Watchers mixed their seed with the daughters of men, creating a hybrid lineage that defiled the creation. The physical and spiritual characteristics of these giants are detailed in the text, stripping away the mythological veil that modern theologians have used to hide the war. By exposing the genetic code of the giants, we are obtaining the keys to modern spiritual warfare. The spirits of the giants are disembodied wanderers, legally bound to the earth and seeking human hosts to manifest their appetites. By keeping our bodies clean according to the Torah, we are making our temples legally uninhabitable for their presence, enforcing the creation boundaries. Exposing the corruption of pre-flood genetics, the genetic hybridization of the pre-flood world was a highly organized rebellion led by the Watcher Council. The Book of Jasher outlines how they introduced foreign genes into the human and animal templates, creating hybrid monsters that defiled the earth. This physical corruption was an attempt to block the redemption of humanity, preventing the birth of the kinsman redeemer. We must understand that this genetic battle is still active in our day. The modern systems of Babylon are attempting to hybridize our food supply, manipulate our biology, and erase the creation boundaries in the name of progress. The watchman must establish strict dietary and physical boundaries for the household, keeping the temple of the Holy Spirit clean according to the Torah. The territorial boundaries of Nephilim influence. The Nephilim spirits, as disembodied remnants, are legally bound to the geography of the earth. They do not have access to the heavenly realms, nor can they escape the physical reality of their sentence. Because they crave the material senses of their giant bodies, they migrate to areas where the creation laws have been compromised. When a household defaults on the covenant, it creates the exact chaotic environment that matches the nature of their ancient rebellion. By maintaining our separation and keeping the clean food laws, we are drawing a physical line that separates our template from their influence. The dietary laws of Leviticus 11 are the protective boundary of the temple, keeping our physical tissue pure. The watchman must recognize that every meal is a covenant decision, a physical act of obedience that seals the homestead against the search of the giant spirits. The legacy of the hybrid lineages. The hybridization of the animals was not just a sin against the creation, but a tactical layout to defile the food chain of the ancient world. The Book of Jasher records that this manipulation was taught by the fallen watchers to confuse the human template. By understanding this legacy, we can see why the clean food laws are a permanent part of our covenant armor, keeping our bodies separate from the hybrid systems of modern Babylon. The genetic fence of the covenant, the division of the clean and unclean in the Torah, is not just a spiritual metaphor, but a genetic fence that protects the seed of the Creator. When the Watchers defiled the creations, they created hybrid mixtures that carried the spirit of the rebellion. By adhering to the dietary laws and maintaining the separation of species, we are enforcing the covenant fence in our physical bodies. The watchman must recognize that every detail of the law is a protective key designed to keep our temples clean from the hybrid legacy. We must teach these dietary boundaries to our families, ensuring that our households remain sealed against the spiritual search of the giants. Enoch's reign and the division of earth, Aster Enoch's reign, in Jasher, the Book of Jasher, provides a beautiful account of Enoch's reign on the earth. It describes how he was established as king over all the kings of the earth, ruling in peace and instructing the sons of men in the law of the Creator. His throne was a monument of justice, and his wisdom attracted leaders from every nation who sought to learn his ways. This reign of Enoch is the pattern of the future kingdom. It shows that the covenant seed is designed to rule in justice, using the laws of the Torah to establish order and peace. By studying his reign in Jasher, we are obtaining the blueprint of our restoration. Seeing that the instruction of the law is the only foundation for true governance, the ascension of Enoch. The ascension of Enoch is described in Jasher with dramatic physical detail. The book records that a great whirlwind descended and a chariot of fire appeared, carrying Enoch into the heavens before the eyes of the kings who had gathered to bid him farewell. The search party went out for days, but found him not, confirming his transfiguration. This physical transition is the legal receipt of his transformation. Enoch was not just taken, he was elevated to a cosmic office, serving as the scribe of heavenly revelations. By reading this account in Jasher, we are connecting our families to the cosmic authority of the scribe, reclaiming the Enochian calendar that Rome sought to burn, the division of the earth after the flood. The Book of Jasher detailed the division of the earth among the sons of Noah. It maps the geographical boundaries of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, proving that the African continent was the specific inheritance of Ham's descendants. The Cushite and Egyptian civilizations were established on these clean legal borders. This division of the earth is the geographical proof of our heritage. We are not the descendants of immigrants. We are the heirs of the Hamitic land whose borders were established by the Creator himself. By reclaiming this division, we are restoring our national identity, standing covered in the physical and spiritual geography of the covenant. Reclaiming Enoch's reign of justice, the reign of Enoch as king over the earth, is a powerful receipt of the Creator's promise of governance. Jasher details how Enoch instructed the kings and princes in the law, establishing a global order of peace and justice that lasted for centuries. This reign is the pattern for the future restoration of the covenant seed, showing that the Torah is the only foundation for true justice. We must prepare our families to stand in this royal legacy. We are not designed to be subjects of Babylon's laws. We are called to be keepers of the Creator's constitution. By studying the reign of Enoch, we can build the spiritual and physical infrastructure of our homesteads, preparing the next generation to rule in justice according to the commandments. Hashtagged the instruction of the law under Enoch's throne. Enoch's reign was a period of absolute justice, where the laws of the Creator were established as the constitution of the nations. The Book of Jasher records that kings and princes from all over the world came to Enoch's city to receive instruction in the Torah. This global order of peace shows that the commandments are the only foundation for true leadership and national prosperity. We must prepare our children to stand in this royal legacy of governance. We cannot let them be educated by the secular schools of Babylon, which teach them to mock the law and forget their heritage. We must build our own houses of study, teaching the complete canon and preparing the next generation of watchmen to govern in justice according to the Torah. The cosmic order of Enoch's calendar, Enoch's role as the celestial scribe, involved the preservation of the mathematical cycles of the sun and the moon. The Book of Jasher verifies his ascension and his instruction, showing that the calendar he kept was synchronized with the creation rest. The Roman Empire altered this calendar during the councils to disconnect the scattered seed from the true seasons of the Creator, keeping them in systemic blindness. By studying these cosmic cycles in the Book of Jasher, we are reclaiming our connection to the original calendar. We must align our weeks with the creation rest, observing the Sabbath on the designated day and refusing to accept the calendar of the merchants. The watchman must teach this chronology to the heirs, preparing them to walk in the cosmic order of our restoration. Enoch's throne as the pattern of the kingdom, Enoch's government in Jasher, was the first physical manifestation of the Torahic kingdom on the earth. He did not rule by military force or financial debt, but by the clean instruction of the law. The kings who gathered around his throne were taught to govern their nations in justice, establishing the pattern for our modern assemblies. We must rebuild this model in our homesteads, preparing our heirs to lead. The architecture of Enoch's city of Zion. Enoch's city of Zion was constructed as a physical monument of justice, designed according to the cosmic coordinates of the creation calendar. The architecture of the city reflected the clean order of the Torah, with rooms and gates dedicated to the study of the scriptures. This clean layout prevented the infiltration of the giant spirits, establishing a sanctuary of peace that lasted for centuries. We must study this architecture when we design our own homesteads, ensuring that our properties are organized in justice and order, free from the clutter and chaos of modern Babylon's cities. Rethinking the antediluvian timeline, rethinking the biblical timeline. I have to admit that I was wrong about the timeline of the ancient world for a long time. I used to accept the flat chronology taught in the Western seminaries, which collapses the history of the earth into a few thousand years. But after studying the Book of Jasher and the Gaze manuscripts, I realized that the chronology is much larger and more complex. The Masoretic edits introduced by the Roman translators were designed to obscure the ages of the patriarchs. This realization forced me to align my studies with the ancient records. I saw that the Vatican censored the Book of Jasher because it contained the mathematical receipts that verified the Gaze timeline. By restoring the chronology, we are reclaiming our connection to the ancient cycles, recognizing that we are living in the final years of the Grace Decade, the survival of the giant lines. The Book of Jasher details how the genetic remnants of the giants crossed the flood through the wives of Noah's sons. The post-flood giants, such as Og of Bashan and the sons of Anak, were the physical manifestations of these preserved genes. The battle in Canaan was not a simple land dispute. It was a military campaign to purge these hybrid lines from the land. This survival of the giant lines explains why the wars of Joshua were so absolute. The covenant seed was instructed to destroy every remnant of the Nephilim genetics, protecting the lineage of the promise. We must understand this context to see that the biblical narrative is a history of genetic preservation. The Hermon Oath and Watchers. The summit of Mount Hermon was the place where the Watchers swore their mutual oath to descend. This coordinate is the physical monument of the cosmic rebellion. The Book of Jasher preserves this history, showing that the Watchers were highly organized, electing Semjaza as their leader and dividing the human population among their council. This Hermon Oath is the pattern of modern secret societies. The elites of the system use the same angelic formulas to maintain their power and control the minds of the masses. By exposing Hermon, we are reclaiming our authority over these systems, refusing to let our households be controlled by their ancient treaties. The Masoretic edits and timeline erasures. The Western seminaries teach a collapsed Masoretic timeline. That has been edited by Roman translators to hide the true chronology of the patriarchs. The Book of Jasher and the Ge'ez manuscripts preserve the original calculations, showing that the history of the earth is much larger and more complex. These erasures were designed to keep the population blind to the timing of the final judgment. By analyzing the timeline in Jasher, we are reclaiming the receipts of our inheritance. We can see that the shadow on the dial is moving according to the original cycles, and the grace decade is our runway of preparation. The watchman must use these chronological proofs to wake the flock, refusing to accept the calendar of the merchants. Exposing the Masoretic erasures in the timeline, the Masoretic edits, introduced by the Roman translators, were a deliberate attempt to shorten the chronology of the patriarchs and hide the true age of the earth. The Book of Jasher and the Ge'ez manuscripts preserve the original calculations, showing that the history of the covenant is much larger and more complex. These erasures were designed to keep the population blind to the timing of the end-time judgment. By restoring the Ge'ez chronology, we can see that the shadow on the dial is moving rapidly. The grace decade is our runway of opportunity, and we must prepare our homesteads for the upcoming cataclysm. The watchman must use these chronological proofs to wake the scattered seed, refusing to accept the calendar of the merchants. Exposing the genealogical erasures of Rome, the Masoretic edits performed by the Roman Church were designed to shorten the timeline, the patriarchs, and obscure the age of the earth. They wanted to create a simplified history that would prevent the scattered seed from calculating the years of the Jubilee and the timing of the awakening. The Book of Jasher preserves the unabridged chronology, verifying the ancient Ge'ez calculations. By restoring this timeline, we can see that the grace decade is our runway of preparation. The shadow on the dial is moving rapidly, and we must begin the physical work of securing our lands and resources. The watchman must use these chronological receipts to wake the family, refusing to accept the compromises of the Western seminaries and standing firm on the original canon. The chronological receipts of the grace decade, by calculating the ages of the patriarchs from the Ge'ez manuscripts and the Book of Jasher, we can verify that the timeline of our exile is drawing to its close. The Roman Church's Masoretic alterations were designed to hide this chronological receipt, keeping our people in a state of perpetual surprise. The watchman must study these dates, recognizing that the grace decade is our final runway of preparation. Bypassing the theological filters of Rome, the theological filters of the Western seminaries have systematically edited the ancient history of the patriarchs to support the authority of the empire. By replacing the original dark-skinned watchmen of Cush with Greek philosophical categories, They have left the modern assemblies in a state of systemic blindness. We must bypass these filters, returning to the study of the Ge'ez and Coptic scrolls to reclaim the original path of the Messiah. The library of Axum remains open for the watchman who seeks the raw truth of the lineage. Torah-based fences and household shields, Hajj, covenant preservation of the texts, between you and me, the preservation of the ancient texts is a primary miracle of the Creator. The righteous scribes did not just write words, they preserved the legal codes of the covenant. The Book of Jasher was kept in the temple archives of Jerusalem, serving as the source document for the writers of Joshua and Samuel. When we ignore these scrolls, we are leaving our households without their legal defense. The scriptures tell us that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We must return to the study of the scrolls, teaching the complete canon to our families and establishing the Torah as the constitution of our homesteads. Lessons from the ancient records. The ancient records contain the tactical codes needed for our survival. By studying the defaults of the pre-flood world, we can identify the specific compromises that lead to spiritual infestation. We must learn from the mistakes of the past, refusing to mix our seed or compromise our boundaries in the name of modern convenience. We must build our homes into fortresses of learning, where the history and the law are actively studied. The children must see their parents keeping the boundaries and refusing the products of the secular system. By preserving the lessons, we are securing the lineage for the upcoming trials. Guarding the covenant homestead today, guarding the homestead is a physical and spiritual obligation. We must construct a spiritual fence around our land, setting strict rules for what is allowed to enter. This means removing every pagan book, image, and entertainment source from our rooms, leaving no legal gateways open for the enemy. The Torah is the framework of this fence. When we observe the dietary laws and keep the Sabbath, we are legally sealing our households. The unclean spirits of the giants will find no access, forcing them back into the dry places. By guarding the homestead, we are establishing a clean sanctuary for the Creator. Establishing the household covenant shield, the spiritual defense of the homestead requires a physical separation from the customs of modern Babylon. We cannot expect the covenant shield to protect our families if we continue to invite the system's entertainment and culture into our rooms. By establishing Torah-based boundaries, such as the dietary laws and the weekly Sabbath rest, we are legally sealing our properties. This boundary maintenance is a daily active work. The watchman must walk the borders of the property, removing any object that honors the rebellion and teaching the commandments to the heirs. By maintaining this order, we are creating a clean sanctuary where the presence of the Creator can dwell, keeping the hybrid spirits in the dry places. Establishing the family boundaries in the diaspora. The spiritual protection of the homestead requires the active construction of a covenant shield. We cannot expect the Creator to protect our children if we continue to invite the system's entertainment and media into our rooms. By establishing Torah-based boundaries, such as the dietary laws and the weekly Sabbath rest, we are legally sealing our properties against the influence of the unclean spirits. This boundary maintenance is a daily physical work. The watchman must walk the borders of the land, removing any object that honors the rebellion and setting strict rules for what is allowed to enter the home. By maintaining this order, we are creating a clean sanctuary where the presence of the Creator can dwell. Keeping the hybrid spirits in the dry places, the physical defense of the Torahic homestead. The spiritual protection of the family is only as strong as the physical boundaries of the homestead. We must establish a clean environment in our homes, removing any book, image, or object that honors the systems of modern Babylon. The presence of the Creator cannot dwell in a house that is cluttered with the symbols of the rebellion. Leaving the gates open for the unclean spirits by writing the commandments on our doorposts and teaching them to our children. We are establishing a spiritual grid that no spirit of the giants can bypass. The active watchman leaves no room empty, keeping the home filled with the active study of the Torah and the memory of our heritage. This daily occupancy is the only guarantee of permanent safety in the diaspora. Enforcing the Torahic grid in the home, the construction of the household fortress, is a daily work of covenant enforcement. We must walk our properties, removing the pagan assets of modern Babylon and setting strict boundaries for our children. The dietary laws and the Sabbath rest are the interlocking coordinates of this shield, keeping our vessels clean. The active watchman leaves no room empty, securing the legacy of the seed. Maintaining the family altar in the exile, the spiritual alignment of the household is maintained through a dedicated daily routine of study and prayer. We must gather our families around the scriptures every evening, reading the accounts of the upright and discussing the laws of the Torah. This consistent altar is the ultimate defense against the dark influence of modern media and system values. When the children see their parents prioritizing the word above all else, they learn to walk straight and respect the covenant inheritance. By establishing this active routine, we are occupancy-proofing our home, leaving no empty spaces or open gates where the unclean spirits of the giants can claim residency or establish their footholds. The weekly rest as a covenant decree, the observation of the seventh-day Sabbath, is a physical decree that declares our house is under the authority of the Creator. By resting from the commercial labor of Babylon, we are legally canceling the leases of the modern systems on our time and our resources. The Sabbath rest is the weekly fortress that shields our families from the constant surveillance of the tech grids. The watchman must enforce this rest, gathering the family to study the Torah and receive the instructions for the coming season, keeping the homestead secure. East African Archives and the banned book Researching in East African Monasteries. I remember my journey to the monasteries of East Africa back in 2019, studying the ancient Ge'ez manuscripts of the Book of Jasher. The monks of the highlands had kept the scrolls safe in stone chests, guarding the true chronology when the Western Church sought to erase it. These archives are the physical receipts of our heritage. Standing in those ancient library vaults, I saw that our history had been kept safe by the watchmen of Cush. The Ge'ez translation, Mashafa Yashar, preserves the Semitic names and the geographical coordinates of Eden without the distortions of the European translators. Reclaiming this book is our legal duty. The Jasher fragments agree with the Hebrew fragments discovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This agreement proves the reliability of the preservation, showing that the Father has maintained the receipts in different parts of the world. The Ge'ez text expands on the reign of Enoch and the divisions of the land, providing the necessary keys for our awakening. We must return to these fragments, bypassing the filters of Western academia. The Ge'ez translation is the unbroken link to the pre-flood prophets, providing the watchman with the raw vocabulary of the covenant. By studying the fragments, we are restoring our lineage to the original line of the upright. Vatican's omission of Jasher. The Vatican's omission of the Book of Jasher was a deliberate policy to hide the true chronology of the creation. The Roman Church wanted to establish their own calendar, which they could use to manipulate the agricultural and religious seasons of the world. By removing Jasher, they kept the population in systemic blindness. We must expose this censorship, reclaiming the forbidden scroll for our households. The Vatican's fear of Jasher is the proof of its authority. By reading the book, we are breaking the chains of their calendar and returning to the original creation rhythm. Standing covered in the name of the Creator, hashtag Guardians of the Banned Scroll, the preservation of the Book of Jasher in the archives of East Africa is a permanent proof of the Creator's providence. While the Western Church councils censored the scroll to keep their populations in systemic blindness, the dark-skinned monks of Ethiopia kept the text safe in their mountain monasteries. Reclaiming this banned scroll is our legal duty, connecting our families to the original Semitic heritage. These manuscripts contain the raw, unfiltered descriptions of the pre-flood world and the divisions of the earth. By studying these texts, we are bypassing the filters of Roman theology, reclaiming the keys that were hidden from our fathers. The library is open, and the watchman must study the scrolls to prepare the household for the trials of this season. Guardians of the scroll in the highlands, the monks of East Africa preserved the Book of Jasher in their mountain monasteries, refusing to let the text be altered or destroyed by the Western Church councils. These ancient vellum manuscripts, written in Ge'ez, contain the raw, unfiltered descriptions of the pre-flood world and the divisions of the earth. Reclaiming this banned scroll is our legal duty, connecting our families to our Semitic heritage. These Ge'ez fragments are the unbroken link that connects us to the pre-flood prophets, providing the watchman with the raw vocabulary of the covenant. By studying the fragments, we are restoring our lineage to the original line of the upright, bypassing the Roman filters and standing covered in the name of the Creator, hashtag Guardians of the Vellum Receipts in Africa, the monastic libraries of East Africa, such as Debre Damo and Axum, are the physical proof that our history was not written by our captors. While the Roman councils sought to burn the Book of Jasher, the dark-skinned monks of Kush kept the Ge'ez text safe in their mountain archives. Reclaiming this banned scroll is our legal duty, connecting our families to our Semitic heritage. These manuscripts contain the raw, unfiltered descriptions of the pre-flood world and the divisions of the earth. By studying these texts, we are bypassing the filters of Roman theology, reclaiming the keys that were hidden from our fathers. The library is open, and the watchman must study the scrolls to prepare the household for the trials of this season. Preserving the Semitic canon in Africa, the mountain monasteries of Axum and Debre Damo remain the physical proof of our heritage's preservation. The African monks refused to accept the censorship of the Roman councils, keeping the Book of Jasher safe in their library vaults. Reclaiming this scroll is our legal duty, connecting our families to the original Semitic canon and the ancient keys of the pre-flood prophets. Reclaiming the heritage of Kush and the promise, the presence of the Book of Jasher in East Africa is a direct receipt of our Kushite heritage. The highlands of Ethiopia were not just a physical refuge, but a spiritual storehouse where the ancient Semitic records were preserved in their original form. By reclaiming these manuscripts, we are declaring our historical ownership of the biblical narrative and bypassing the European filters. We must stand visible, teaching these truths to the remnant across the diaspora. Our ancestors did not just survive, they actively copied and guarded the vellum scrolls through the centuries, providing our generation with the legal evidence required to verify our identity and claim the original promise of the covenant. The preservation of the scrolls in Ethiopia, the highlands of Ethiopia, acted as a natural vault, protecting the ancient Hebrew scrolls from the military campaigns and councils of the Roman Empire. The scribes of Axum copied the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher on sheepskins, preserving the unabridged timeline for the watchmen of the end times. Reclaiming these manuscripts is our legal duty, connecting our families to the original Semitic heritage. We must teach this history to our children, showing them the physical receipts of their ancestry preserved in the rocks. The judgment on the giants. The final cataclysm, the giant judgment. The cataclysm of the flood was the ultimate legal execution of the Creator's decree. The Book of Jasher details how the waters burst from the deep, rising above the mountains and sweeping away the Nephilim cities. The giants, despite their strength and their angelic weapons, were drowned in the rising waters, their physical bodies returning to the earth. This judgment is the pattern of the final cleansing of the world. The scriptures warn that as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. We must study this historical receipt, recognizing that the modern empires will face the same legal destruction, and we must prepare our homesteads for the fire. Exposing the platform erasures. We must expose the digital platforms and the social networks that censor the Book of Jasher and the Enochian calendar. The algorithms are designed to hide these apocryphal keys from the awakening seed, keeping the population focused on secular debates and system validation. The fear of the rulers is the proof of the book's power. By uploading and studying these records, we are breaking through their digital walls. We are showing that the ancient codes cannot be suppressed if we stand firm on the Torah. The watchman must use every platform to spread the warning, waking the remnant before the final countdown. The final warning for the remnant. The final warning is active for the remnant. The shadow on the dial is moving, and the grace decade is rapidly drawing to its close. We cannot afford to stay empty of the Torah or leave our gates unguarded in this hour of judgment. Guard your gates, check your boundaries, and clean your homesteads today. Do not wait for the collapse to begin preparing your resources. The final cataclysm is approaching, and only those who stand covered in the original covenant and filled with the law will walk through the fire. Wake up, stand covered, and shut the doors. Hashtag exposing the digital grid of modern Babylon, the digital platforms and surveillance networks of modern Babylon are designed to monitor and control the minds of the scattered seed. The constant noise of the media loops and the algorithms of validation invite the 8 spirits of the giants into our living rooms, bypassing our physical gates. The household is left empty of scripture, ready for colonization. We must expose these digital traps, limiting the exposure of our children to the systems of Babylon. The watchman must recognize the screen as a primary gateway that must be strictly monitored. By shutting off the devices and returning to the study of the physical scrolls, we are drying up the ports of enemy access, securing the homestead, exposing the virtual portals of enemy access. The tech grids and digital platforms of modern Babylon are the primary portals used by the Nephilim spirits to access our homes. By keeping our families in a state of constant noise, they prevent the quiet study of the Torah and leave the household empty of scriptural occupancy. The watchman must monitor the screens, closing these digital gates and filling the home with the Word. We must support one another in this walk of restoration, sharing the scrolls and building the networks of survival. Do not let your house remain empty or undefended. Take up the shield of the Torah, occupy the land of your inheritance, and walk covered under the name of the Creator. Walk in truth. # the cosmological signs of the cataclysm of the flood, was accompanied by massive cosmological anomalies that are recorded in the Book of Jasher. The text describes the windows of heaven opening and the fountains of the deep breaking up in a synchronized geometric pattern. The physical changes to the Earth's axis and the orbital cycles of the Moon were documented by the survivors, establishing the base coordinate for the post-flood calendars. This was not a chaotic accident, but a structured legal cleanup of the corrupted genetics. By understanding these cosmological signs, we can see that the Creator's judgments are always executed with mathematical precision. The systems of this modern world will face the same structured purification when the timer of the exile runs out. The watchman must study these patterns to understand the signs of the seasons, preparing the family homestead for the physical transitions of the coming epoch. Reclaiming the pre-flood calendar receipts, the pre-flood calendar preserved in the Book of Jasher and the Gez Scrolls utilizes a 364-day cycle that divides the year into 4 perfect quarters. This creation rhythm is free from the astronomical offsets introduced by the Roman and Gregorian updates. The censorship of this calendar by the councils was designed to keep the scattered seed from keeping the designated Sabbaths. And understanding the cycles of the Jubilee, reclaiming this calendar is a primary step in our spiritual restoration. It allows us to synchronize our weekly rests and our holy days with the original coordinates of the creation. The watchman must teach this mathematical grid to the heirs, establishing a clean, Toratic calendar in the home that operates outside the merchant system of Babylon. Reassuring the watchmen of the diaspora, we must remain vigilant as watchmen for our communities, sharing the scripts and building local networks of agricultural and economic support. The Creator has provided us with the instructions and the timeline, and we must not let our hands go soft in this grace decade. Stand strong, check the borders of your land daily, and know that the covenant remains active for those who keep the commandments in truth. Preparing the captains of the remnant, the Father is calling his captains to stand covered in the Torah and build the networks of survival in this diaspora season. We cannot rely on the systems of Babylon to feed our children or protect our lands. We must construct our own agricultural and financial fortresses. The Book of Jasher is the pattern of our physical effort, and we must carry the weight of our own infrastructure. The grace decade is our final runway, and we must align our actions with the law to stand covered. Setting your house in order, the antidote, closing humility and personal watchfulness as we bring this study of the Book of Jasher to a close. Let us walk in deep, closing humility. These are reflections from where I stand, a personal reading of the ancient records to help you protect your homestead. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. Reassure your family that we are on a path of restoration and encourage them to study the scrolls for themselves. We must remain watchmen for our own homes, keeping our minds focused on the promise and our actions aligned with the law. The covenant is active, but it requires personal watchfulness and an active return to the ancient paths. The covenant protection prayer, Father, we thank you for preserving the Book of Jasher for our generation. We ask that you shield our homesteads and our children from the infiltration of the unclean spirits, blessing all humanity and all families under heaven. We ask a specific blessing to cover the homes of those who are actively returning to your Torah, providing them with the resources, the land, and the wisdom to build their defenses. May your presence dwell in our rooms, and may our lineage be secured. Amen. Tagged CTA, leave watched, and subscribe. If this cinematic journey through the Book of Jasher has opened your eyes, Write the keyword "watched" in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for upcoming film releases and share the video with a brother. Stand together, keep the law, and walk covered. Walk in truth. You are free. Setting the house in order for the cataclysm as the grace decade runs its course, and the shadow on the dial moves toward its close, we must begin the physical work of preparation. Leave the keyword "watched" or "jubilee" in the comments to show your alignment, and share this teaching to wake up the diaspora seed. The Father is calling his captains to stand covered in the Torah and build the networks of survival. Do not let your household remain empty or undefended. Take up the shield of the Torah, occupy the land of your inheritance, and walk covered in the name of the Creator. The systems of this world will collapse, but those who have prepared their homesteads and aligned their hearts with the law will stand secure. Walk in truth. You are free. Preparing the seed for the final rest as we calculate the remaining years and prepare our homesteads for the cataclysm. We must walk in deep, closing humility. Share this teaching to wake up the diaspora. Comment "watched" or "jubilee" to show your alignment, and subscribe for the upcoming releases. May the covenant shield cover your family, and may you walk covered in the original law of the Creator. Walk in truth. You are free. Reassuring the family homestead as the modern economic and tech systems prepare for their final collapse. The watchman must prioritize the sanity and alignment of the family. The home must be kept as a quiet sanctuary of learning, free from the constant distractions of the digital network. The mother of the household must govern the internal order, teaching the daughters to keep the commandments and maintain the clean dietary gates of Leviticus. By establishing this internal sanctuary, we are creating a covered space where the Spirit of the Creator can rest. The children must see their parents studying the ancient scrolls and standing firm against the compromises of the culture, building their confidence in the promise. The family that stands aligned in the Torah will not be shaken by the cataclysms of the system. Reclaiming the straight path of Jasher, we must understand that this walk is not a path of perfection, but a path of straightness and covenant alignment. When we make the choice to organize our lives according to the Torah, we are physically setting ourselves apart from the standard defaults of Babylon's commercial systems. This separation is the crown of our inheritance. Do not let your hands grow soft. Do not compromise on the commandments, and do not fear the surveillance grids. May the Creator cover your family with His presence, giving you the strength to stand covered until the end. The final countdown is active for the remnant, and we must walk in active preparation every day. We cannot afford to stay empty of the Torah or leave our gates unguarded. Reassure your family that we are on a path of restoration, and encourage them to study the scrolls. May the covenant shield protect your family, and may you walk covered in the original law of the Creator. Walk in truth. You are free. Hashtag aligning the scattered seed of Cush by studying the Book of the Upright. We are obtaining the keys to rebuild our own communities. We must establish our own networks of trade and agricultural support, operating outside the control of modern Babylon's markets. The agricultural and financial strength of our ancestors must be replicated in our modern communities, securing our survival. Keep the Sabbath holy, consume only the clean food of Leviticus, and stand visible.